Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast with 2 Ds for a double dose of episodes today. I'm so stoked to introduce some incredible people today, ladies and gentlemen. I think you're going to love this. I know I already love it. Let me just jump in here with what I got. There are moments in our lives when the veil lifts, when the illusions fall away and what remains is truth, raw and unfiltered. It is in these moments that we are called to choose, to turn back into the shadows of familiarity, or to walk forward into the fire of awakening. Today, you're about to meet two people who have not only walked that path, but have become guides for those ready to burn away what no longer serves and to stand in the flame of their own becoming. Patrick and Michele Fishley are the founders of Soul Reflections, the world's first global online Ibogaine community, a sanctuary for practitioners, providers, seekers, and visionaries alike. But their story isn't just digital, it's deeply spiritual, rooted in blood, bone, and the ancient tradition. They are the Ngangas, healers and seers, initiated into the sacred Bwiti traditions of Gabon, recognized by the elders themselves, not just for their knowledge, but for their courage, their humility, and the relentless commitment to truth. Patrick, known in the Bwiti tradition as Dibadi, Mabunza Makuku, Akandaji, sorry for the pronunciation, the warrior with the Bwiti force and flames of truth from his mouth, is a registered nurse with over 3 decades of experience in emergency rooms, ICUs, and trauma bays. A medical director and lead facilitator, he has guided over 1,500 Iboga journeys with a perfect safety record. His work bridges the primal and the clinical, the ancestral and the modern. Michele, known as the Yaketa, mother of twins, mother of all, is a licensed practical nurse and a transformational integration coach with over 18 years of acute care experience. She's a fierce and nurturing presence in the space, initiated into the sacred feminine lineages of the Nyembe and Mabundi traditions. Michele brings the power of the mother, the healer, and the spiritual midwife into every ceremony, retreat, and conversation. Together, Patrick and Michele have turned their lives into a living ceremony. They carry the medicine not just in their hands, but in their hearts. Through the annual pilgrimages to Gabon, they continue to deepen their commitment to the Bwiti traditions, honoring the land, the elders, and the sacred fire of Iboga. Michele and Patrick, thank you so much for being here today. It's a total honor to talk to you.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for that introduction. Holy cow.
It's important. When I was doing some research and talking to the incredible Kimberly Adams, who everybody should know Kimberly Adams. She's an amazing individual. And when it comes to grief, I think she is someone who is really at the bedside of it and bringing the stories to light. So thank you, Kimberly, for the introductions and doing all that you do. But it's important. I think that you guys have a really incredible background and you're steeped in the actual traditions and stuff. But before we get there, what brought you to this? I mean, you guys both had these medical careers. You're in medicine. Probably things were going down this path that you thought was a normal path. And like, what happened, man? Why the turn to Iboga?
Well, if I have to tell the truth, I was in a multi-level marketing. And my upline said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Ibogaine?" And for detoxing and such. And he knew that we were both nurses in this field. And I said, yeah, it's kind of cool. So we started up a little business treating, especially the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is a real notorious space for addictions. And we started that. And then moving along, we saw such amazing acts of feet with this medicine. And we were introduced to the whole medicine, the whole Iboga part of it in traditional style, and fell in love with it. And it's like, no, this is where we need to be because it's just so much more, so much more. So those MLM companies, they're good for things sometimes. Even bringing you to this space here, without it, I may not have been where I'm at now.
As weird
as it sounds.
Yeah. It's amazing the way in which the world communicates to us. And I think it speaks volumes of, it doesn't matter where you're from, it's where you're at. And like sometimes the world, you're fortunate enough to have it collapse, or you're fortunate to be in a space where something bigger calls to you. And I think it echoes that. It doesn't really matter where you came from. Like, it matters where you're at and like how you get there and stuff. So from that point, you're like, you're starting to learn about Iboga. Like, this is amazing. You're practicing this, like you're working with it. But then there's a whole other level by going back to the motherland. And then all of a sudden you're like, let me investigate the people that figured this thing out. Like, what was that like? And how did that relationship form?
Well, it formed, I think it took longer than we would have wanted it to.
Of course, always does.
So we had been working with the medicine for quite a few years before we were able to go to Gabon, because we wanted to go in a good way.
Yeah.
And with the right people. And so when the opportunity came, we were like, yeah. I was terrified, to be honest, because it was so not something that I would say I would typically do. I'm not like a big risk taker, although when I think of it now, in a way I am, because we work with a medicine that's, certainly not mainstream. So, but I think when you know something is right, you know something is right. And so even though you're afraid, you do it anyway.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. I think it speaks to the idea of courage. And I think that people that battle with addiction, they must find that courage. Like, something's wrong. And, we were speaking a little bit before the conversation about, what does it take to be a guide? And for me, in my opinion, like, you have to have walked through the flames of your own destruction. Like, if you want to understand addiction, you probably should be addicted to something. You should probably understand what it feels like to be thinking about a substance when you have your family around you and you can't stop thinking about that substance, and it steals away all those valuable minutes that deep in your heart, like, you should be embracing, but you're not, because you're thinking about this other thing. Like, woo, that is a tough place to be. It must be even tough to work with people like that. And like, you yourselves have walked through some different flames like that. What are your thoughts when I say that?
Well, so that's usually the conversation that comes up when people hear about Iboga or Ibogaine in particular. Just kind of what you said, and it's very true. Mm-hmm. But here's another spin on it. Mm-hmm. We all have addictions. Some of us are just addicted to our mind, our negative thought. Could you imagine being in a relationship with that negative thought running through, destroying your self-worth, destroying what you could be to your partner, to your children, to life, in the same very way that heroin can destroy or alcohol can destroy. Those things in our mind can destroy, rip it apart, but we don't usually see it as such because it's internal, yet affecting external. Right?
And socially acceptable.
Yes.
I'm Patrick. I have depression. Really bad. I'm on lots of meds. And I'm not knocking that because it's important for some people to be on these, and that's fine. But it's to realize what's actually going on, and we can become addicted to our mind just as much as we can be to a substance, is to a behavior, to a way of thinking, and we get into that loop. And that's the challenge. Lucky that this medicine is a real mind medicine that loves to get in, show you your mind, show you how to work with your mind and how to remember who you actually are before the stories that attach to us. It's about remembering in a lot of ways. Because as we sit here, and everyone who's watching and everyone who's out there, the way we sit right now, believe it or not, we are enough. Right now, you are enough. But you may not remember some of it. So this medicine is really good for helping us to remember that we are enough. We're creators. So that's very powerful. We're powerful beings.
One that I use quite a bit is, I have everything I need. Like, that's such a good one for everybody out there listening. Like, just use, like, if you get in those dark spots, just breathe in and be like, I got everything I need. I have everything I need. Like, it's so powerful to think about the ideas of addiction and like you had mentioned, like society, like how many of us are addicted to money? Like we're addicted to these things we don't even know we're addicted to. Like it's so crazy when you start peeling back that onion and start seeing maybe clear for the first time, or you have what the alcoholic calls the moment of clarity, or the oh man, you can feel it. It's visceral. It's in you. It surrounds our society. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's prolific. And this medicine is like amazing. It's one of the things that, you know, we can guarantee will happen with people. So Iboga works with everybody so differently. So no journey is the same, but we can tell people it's going to show you your mind.
Mhm.
You know, because that it knows that's where most of our problems are, you
Mhm.
know, are in our mind.
Yeah, so get
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. And I think that's why it has its reputation, because it's really hard to face and be accountable for your own creation, which is your life as it is now. And Iboga is definitely an accountability medicine. So it's going to be like, oh, you're not happy with your life? Well, let me show you why you're responsible for it.
What? I created all this mess. There's no way I wouldn't do this to myself. There's no way I would do this. Oh my gosh, no way.
I'm not choosing that. Or sometimes people say, if it was that simple, I would have done it already. But that's not how that works. Usually the simple things are the hardest to do.
Yeah. You know, you can't see your head through your eyes. You know what I mean by that? Like I can see my reflection of you and I can see it in a mirror, but like no matter how much I bend my head or how much I squint I can't see my head. But it seems like, you know, ancient traditions and people like the Bwiti and there are ways that you can. And it sounds like this medicine is one of those ways.
Yeah, you know, and circle back again to the beginning of that conversation is that, you know, we came to this medicine. I mean, we'd never heard of psychedelics and we're just mainstream, you know, doing our thing in the hospitals and whatnot, trying to help as much as we can. And then when we started working with it, it just little by little started showing us, exposing ourselves to ourselves and showing us where our minds are, where our addictions in our minds are. I mean, I wasn't addicted to any substances other than smoking. I had a 50-year-long romance with it.
Yeah.
That's 50, you know, and, you know, and I was that person on the street, you know, all the sneaky ways addiction gets in there. It's crazy. And it shows you that. It shows you also how we talk to ourselves, how we perceive ourselves. So that was a real eye opener for us. And so that was a real saving grace because we didn't come seeking that. It was just shown to us as we were working with this medicine. And, you know, and thank God it did, because it made a big difference in our lives, a big impact as us as humans, as a couple, as parents, as grandparents, you know, as neighbors. It's made a big impact, you know, and we're constantly evolving, we're constantly changing. I mean, that's one thing guaranteed in life, is everything changes. And so every day, you know, there's new things that come up, and this medicine allows us to see it, you know, and hopefully we move through it in a good way and remember, you know, who we are in it all. You know, not saying we have to be perfect, because no one has to be perfect.
No.
Which is good. You know, I know, but it helps you remember, you know, to keep working, be vigilant. So it definitely brings things up, which is great.
Like just the language you use and the way you describe stuff. It's in talking about being better neighbors. Like it seems to me that there's a real embracing of community, and I can't help shake the idea that maybe you learn that by going and being in Gabon and doing the medicine there and sitting down and learning from actual people that have been in the tradition for their life. Like, can you speak to the idea of the relationship between learning from the actual people that have used this plant medicine for so long in community and in that aspect of it?
Well, I think one of the most beautiful things for me about learning from people in Gabon, from, you know, the masters of this tradition in medicine, is that they allow you to discover for yourself. So they don't actually tell you much, especially when you go and do your first initiation. You know, they don't tell you much of anything. And they allow you to experience whatever it is you're going to experience without their input, without their, you know, and what they ask you to do is to tell them what you see. That's your only responsibility, is to tell them what the medicine is showing. And then they guide you gently along the way without ever telling you, you know, what to do, other than like a couple of few very simple instructions, because this medicine is about you knowing you, right? It's not about you knowing someone else's truth. It's about you discovering what's true for you. And so it's really like all that dogma that we see in a lot of, like, especially like with religions and stuff like that, where somebody's like very, you know, directly telling you how to be and how to pray and how to, you know, talk to God. There's none of that. There's just like, you know, this is you for you to experience first. And then if you ask questions, if you want to know more, then they will tell you. And they just tell you a little bit, and then you get to experience that and see where that lands for you. And then they tell you a little more. So it's like, it's a tradition that envelops your learning in a slow process, because there's this ideology that just knowing for the sake of knowing isn't healthy.
It's so true.
You know, you have to understand what you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's personally my favorite sort of thing about the tradition in of itself, and learning from them, and that they're so like patient with you. Just especially because they speak French, and we don't speak French, despite the fact that we're Canadian. Well, he speaks a little bit of French. And so it causes some really funny experiences when, like, you're trying to follow direction and they're like trying to like move you around and sit you down or stand you up or whatever it is they need you to do. So it's definitely a wild experience. Yeah.
When you say wild, like there might be people listening to our podcast that have heard the word Iboga or Ibogaine, but they don't thoroughly understand like what it means. Like it's not like a 30-minute procedure. It's not like a 4-hour procedure. Maybe you can explain to people what it is, and maybe take them through, you know, the depths, maybe not as deep as what happens in the journey, but like the process of it, or as deep as you want to go. Like it's not something that you do in a day, right?
No. No. So, you know, it starts when you make a decision that you're going to come to medicine.
Okay.
That's the preparation, and that's actually where integration starts. You know, because you decided, okay, I'm going to do Iboga, I'm going to do Ibogaine. And remember, Ibogaine is one alkaloid of the hundreds or so alkaloids that are in Iboga itself. So they decide they're going to do it. Stuff's going to start coming up for you. Stuff you thought was deep-seated and you've worked out 30 years ago. You know, some of us would be like 50 years ago. You know, it was worked out, no problem. Why is that bothering me for? You know, it's coming up to be remembered because it obviously wasn't totally worked through. You know, so stuff starts coming up, and that's a common theme across the board. Over the 12.5 years we've been working with this, we see it all the time. And so when a person comes to medicine, you know, it's not a quick magic pill. It's nothing easy about it, but yeah, it's the easiest thing to do. You know, it's easiest thing because all you have to do is surrender to the medicine, but that can be the hardest thing to do. You know, because it's taking us out of the equation, this ego, this whole control, right?
Yeah, identity.
You know, the identity. And so when we start medicine, you know, like we'll start, you know, say we start at like 9 o'clock at night, and we sit around with a fire circle, and we talk about things, you know, truths and whatnot, and we take some medicine, you know, and then starts, you know, in a couple hours, you know, the participants become like deep within the medicine, and so we lay them down on mattresses, and you know, it starts. But by 6 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
that first stage is kind of through, where they're having a hard time walking and a lot of things are coming up, and it's the more intense part of it, right? And even though it's intense, so the difference between this and other things is that it's onirogenic, right? It's like walking in a dream world, like to create. It's not like DMT where you buckle in, you're going for a ride. It's a lot different because you're fully aware. And one of the biggest things we notice from people who are doing the medicine will say, "Hey, how you doing?" And they go, "I don't know. Do I have enough medicine? Like, I feel fully aware. I feel like normal." So yeah, well, that's perfect because it's not about going out. It's not DMT
But yet
molecules.
they're talking to their grandpa and having a full conversation.
Right. Yeah. So this is kind of going on.
Oh, but I've been talking to the squirrel over there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I think you're giving him
Right.
medicine.
So by morning, at 6 in the morning, we walk into the bedroom, so to speak, and it starts the next phase. We call that discovery phase. And that's where it's a lot of insights happen, and even more so. The medicine's still deep within our system working, but you're able to navigate walking a lot easier, and it's just different. It's a different phase now. So it's not as harsh, you might say, or as deep, right? It's thick. But a lot of stuff happens in that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day is integration day, where everyone's kind of back to normal. So it's 48 hours to 72 hours, it kind of
Wow.
come through, right? Whereas Ibogaine's a little bit smaller, knock off about 12 hours, 24 to 48 hours. It just goes through a lot faster, but it's really a lot more intense at the beginning because, the Ibogaine has got a lot more Ibogaine with it, which causes a lot of that stuff.
Well, it's only Ibogaine.
Wow.
Ibogas have more.
That's why I keep her around. She's always keeps me on the straight and narrow. So that's kind of the gist of how it works, right? And then we'll always usually have 2 ceremonies in a retreat, so to speak, because the first one, everyone's going to go through some kind of a detox, be it from substances or from medications you're on or whatever, or the mind,
Especially the mind.
Especially the mind, right? Negative things we talk about or whatever. It's purging. And it's like Michelle always says, it's like the old Windows 98 where we defragged the computers, right? You have all those fancy squiggly and blotchy colors across, and your whole hard drive's running slow, is not responding properly. You're pushing and nothing's working, and then you defrag and it just clears up all this space, and also you got all this space that's open. Things are running smoothly. Well, that's what it does to our mind. All those things that are being defragmented are stories we've attached that have come, and some come from generational, ancestral. Some are just because you were in the room and something happened, but it attaches. So it gets rid of the clutter, So Iboga is really good for that. Yeah, it's like, so, yeah.
I was talking to a mutual friend, Jack Cross, before I came on and was talking to you guys. Shout out to Lakshmi and awake.net. Such incredible things happening over there. And there's a pretty big event. I think you guys are going to be at it on the 17th in June coming up at the Canyon Theater. People should be on the lookout for that. But Jack had mentioned to me, we just talked briefly about Iboga, and he let it slip in passing that his idea, the way that he describes it, is that you're seeing the sort of recalibration of the neuroplasticity and the neurocircuits while simultaneously getting to see the visions of what went wrong and how it went wrong and a chance to clear it up in real time. And does that sound like a pretty accurate assumption of what's happening, or what would you add to that, or what do you think?
Yeah. So sometimes, yeah, that's really accurate. So just like we have to purge physically, like we have to purge, whatever emotional trauma. We have to purge the mental trauma. And there's like these traumas are attached to stories and emotions.
Yeah.
Right. And so the more we associate with that, the more of the story, the more we identify with that story, it's like the more we reinforce that neural pathway, right?
Yep.
So sometimes what happens, and this is like a really common thing on Discovery Day, is people will get into like thought loops. And this is why we always say to people, tell us what's happening for you, because we can help you move through it. So they get stuck in a thought loop about regret, or about something that, you know, happened in the past, or the way they've been acting, or the way they have been treating others, and or just the way they've been being. And it just comes over and over, and they're like, I can't stop. They just keep coming back. And I like say to them, well, like, how many times did you identify it with that? How many times did you think that story? How many times did you? So I've always got to kind of like pull it up like railroad tracks, you know, like pull up these, and some of them are really deep. So it's kind of like keep pulling it up until it gets to the bottom, right? We got to get, so just let them be. Don't resist it. Like, don't fight it, because the more we fight and resist, the longer it takes. So, and usually even just that realization, sort of like that aha moment happens, and then it doesn't have to do it anymore. So, and now Iboga's gone and kind of pulled up all these old tracks, right? Now, and this is why integration is so important, is because now we're really neuroplastic, and we've kind of cleaned up the mental space. So now we have to decide what we want to do. Do we want to relay those tracks and re-identify with that identity, or do we want to create new ones? And if we're not careful, we can just fall back into old patterns. And it's really easy to do because we're super neuroplastic, and we can do it, what do you say, better than we did before. You know, so it's really, we talk about this a lot with people. And this is why, and when you had mentioned community earlier, the second year we went to Gabon, that was something the medicine told us, you have to build community. It was very clear. And so when we came home, we were just like, okay, well, how do we build community? We'll make an online community. And so we did that. And then it's slowly finding its way and shape, and, you know, growing into whatever it's going to be. But it's that community that helps you stay accountable to you. And that's what we don't have anymore. When we live in these houses all by ourselves, or just with our like very core family, and we don't reach out, and we don't have elders, and we don't have people who are, you know, we don't have our grandparents around to help show us, you know, like a better way, or at least allow us the opportunity to see that there is a different way, you know. So yeah, so Iboga just keeps showing you what it is that you're doing. It shows you this is where you're at right now, and I can pull all this up for you. And then now I'm going to leave you with a choice. You can continue to do that old behavior, or you can create a new one that feels more in alignment with your soul. And Iboga will never take your choice away. No. Ever. Because if it takes your choice away, it disempowers you. And this is the hardest thing with people with addiction. When we talk to people with addiction, we say to them, Iboga will not take your choice away. They're like, what? What do you mean? You mean it's not just going to go in there and cure me and I'm never going to have an addiction again? We're like, well, but that wouldn't empower you. What it's going to do is it's going to show you what your addiction is and why you don't want it anymore. And then you can make the better choice.
I love it. It's really well said. We have someone coming in here. For some reason, the name isn't showing up, but it says, there have been a lot of talk about what Ibogaine and Iboga treats. Can you share from your medical perspective on if and how it treats things like Parkinson's, PTSD, and addiction?
Well, with Parkinson's, there's a lot of stuff that happens around the dopamine receptors, you know, and just to put it, I guess, really easily, this medicine of Iboga really helps to replenish and restore the working capabilities of our dopamine in our system, and so that definitely helps. That's why you're seeing such a big benefit with microdosing with Parkinson's, and even now they're seeing it with multiple sclerosis. We're starting to really see that, and it makes sense because this medicine works on neurological pathways, and these neurons go through our whole body. So if they're being repaired and renewed and new pathways made, then we're going to get a lot better communication through our body. So that'll help with the ataxia, the shaking, a lot of different things, and the mental clarity and such. I mean, there's lots of studies that have been done now on Parkinson's with this medicine.
Yeah, and then for addiction, there's two things with addiction. So addiction one, Ibogaine or Iboga, it's going to go in and attach itself to those opioid receptors, and it's a big molecule, so it's able to bump a lot of things off and sort of like bump them off, and then it actually heals that receptor. So what it will do, and the thing that people have to really be aware of, is it makes you what we call drug naive. So it repairs that receptor and brings you back to your original starting point. So whatever, if you were a heroin addict and you came in, did an Ibogaine treatment, you have to make sure that you know that if you chose to go out and use again, and you use the same amount, you could overdose, right? Because you've become drug naive. And then while it's sitting there, it's healing that receptor. And then it's also showing you, well, this is why your addiction is there in the first place. So when we understand why we have an addiction, when we understand that core root and can ask for guidance and healing with it, then we're far more successful in staying, sober. I don't like to work clean, but, we're far more likely to be making those choices to better ourselves, better our lives, look after ourselves rather than harm ourselves or punish ourselves or get stuck in this loop of trying to self-medicate to fix a problem that we don't understand, right? So Iboga heals the receptor and then also helps show us why, so that we can heal that too. We can move forward from that. We can let go of that. And then PTSD.
Well, I mean, it's simply as it's repairing all these neurons. It's repairing how things are firing inside. So part of it too is it helps us remember the traumas and helps us to work through them. It's not about getting rid of the traumas and forgetting them, but it helps us to remove this emotional charge that's affecting us. There's always, with every story, there's always some kind of feeling or physical or somatic charge to it. So it helps things make sense of it, so we can remember without being activated in such a way. There's been, a lot of good studies based on that with veterans and blasts and concussions and different things like that, but also like just PTSD in general. It's that unconscious thing that shakes us to the very core sometimes. So when we're able to work through it, it just kind of separates from that. So it's just, now it's a memory. It's not something that's going to totally speak for us in that sense.
And I think too, we have to realize that what Iboga is doing is showing us how we heal ourselves.
I love that. Yeah.
So, anything's possible, but sometimes what we think we need to do, what we think we need to heal, or what we think the problem is, isn't what we need to do.
It's such a beautiful point.
Yeah, and Iboga is going to show us, well, this is what you need to do first.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, that's what you wanted, but that's not what you're getting. You're going to do this first, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, and that's an important note too, because in as much that everyone wants to be healed, everyone wants to have their pain going away, everyone wants to have their disease processes, you know, downsized and everything else they got. Sometimes it's our journey to go through that, to live through that, and sometimes it's not for us. It's not for us. It's for others. We're actually helping others who see us, you know, and it's complicated, but at the same time, you know, I remember my mother. When we were born, she ended up with rheumatoid arthritis, debilitating. So my whole life until she passed, this is what she had. And so she never was able to heal it. She tried all kinds of things. Well, now, mind you, we didn't have Iboga back then. But nonetheless, you know, really her journey was the others saw her, how she moved through it. And she didn't move through it with suffering and a victimhood. She was strong, you know, and vivacious and feisty. And it taught us how to live in spite of it and through it and because of it and embrace it, you know? So sometimes our journeys are that too. So in as much that Iboga, like I say, it can, anything that's attached to a neuron in our body could be healed. It really could be. It's not always what we need in this moment, you know, in this life, in whatever. But we do get what we need to move through and be the best version of ourselves and live with joy and gratitude. Because clearly when we go to Gabon and, you know, well, they don't got fancy Lamborghinis and cars and, you know, their shirts they got there, and they have stuff they make there, but a lot of times they're wearing stuff that's been brought over from the West, you know, and they're things like that, you know, or even less, animal skins. They're happy because they've learned how to live in joy in the moment, being present, you know, and that's truly what makes us happy. Not worrying about the past, what's happened, not worrying about what's going to happen in the future, but right now, you know, like right now, I'm on a screen talking to this guy named George, and it's awesome. And, you know, life is good. You know, I'm not thinking about the toast I burnt last hour ago. I'm not thinking about the company that's coming down tomorrow. It's right now. And that's what we have to learn to live.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think how many of our ailments manifest themselves by traumas of, like you said, like the mind or the language we use, you know. So I've been having a real problem with the term PTSD, and it makes me think like maybe the problem is in the diagnosis. Like if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, wow, you have a disorder. What if you had post-traumatic growth opportunity? That sounds way better. Like, doesn't that change like the whole modality of fixing things? Like you have this opportunity. Oh, it's not a disorder. It's an opportunity. It's almost like I'm in a ritual. It's almost like I'm going through this rite of passage. I should be excited about this. You know, we're such victims of the language. And then I peel back the onion more and you're like, wow, we've built whole industries around this language. What came first, the disorder or the industry? I don't understand, you know?
Well, and you create your identity.
Oh, that's so true.
And
You're given this thing to hold on to.
Yeah. And we see, I really know, you know, through like social media, you know, you see people and it's through like speaking about mental health, which is really great. Don't get me wrong. I want to speak about mental health, but I want to speak about it from empowerment and not, you know, taking people's power away. So when we see people who are like, you know, I have anxiety or I have ADHD, which is really common, like ADHD, I have neurodivergent brain, you know, which is true. You probably do, which to me is not a bad thing. I think people with neurodivergent brains can think outside the box. I think they're great. They're creatives, right? So why not think of it that way instead of all the negatives that, you know, it may or may not be putting to your life, but now you've identified and are self-actualizing. So there's like this, there's back and forth of like, what am I self-actualizing? What am I labeling and identifying with, rather than saying, oh, look, I had this really interesting thing that came up for me in the way I think or the way I view the world or the way I am. And what do I want to do with it? Like, what do I want to do with it? Because it's, you get to create. That's the power of being human, is you get to create what you want.
Mhm.
And if we look at all the negative things, then that's what we will keep creating. But if we look at all the positive things and what that gives us and the gifts it gives us, and that's what we will keep creating.
Mhm.
So I think it's just, it's that language around it. Like, how are we talking about it? Are we talking about it from empowerment or disempowerment? Are we talking about it from the victim mindset of the life is happening to me or life is happening for me? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
and these are the choices. And it's like, we don't realize how many choices we make a day. It's thousands of choices we make a day. You know, even like in your mind, like, what thoughts are you feeding? How many thoughts do we have a day? Which ones are you paying attention to? Which ones do you give energy to? Because thoughts are crazy. Thoughts, things float through your mind. You're like, what was that? You're standing there and enjoying this, like, beautiful view of maybe the ocean, and then you look down, and you're like, ooh, what if I just fell off this cliff?
Yeah. What if I jump right here? That's crazy.
Where did that come from?
Mhm.
Like, that's thoughts, right? They're weird, random things, but the power is what do you focus on? What do you listen to? What do you develop into who you are? And that's the choice that we get to make.
Mhm. And to remember too that words are spells. The power of the language.
Yeah.
We had a talk when we were first together. And I'm a real morning person. I like to get up early. She knows where I'm going. She knows it's true.
Surrounding his bus is what he's doing.
And I'm like, I love mornings. I get up early because it's quiet, no one's up, and it's like, wow, it's me time. It's great. And I can stay up and do whatever. And she's like, yeah, I'm not really. I'm a night owl. I like staying up late and everything else. I go, yeah, but you should get up early and we can work out. Well, I would. I can. She can get up for the hospital and stuff. But she goes, yeah, but I don't really enjoy it, and yeah, I'm not really a morning person. I'm like, well, with an attitude like that, you won't be. That's what I said.
Right?
It wasn't really popular. But she tried to envision herself as being able to thrive in the morning. There's a 5 a.m. club. I think that was popular a while back, this book, and so she started doing that, and she realized that, well, I can. Now she prefers sleeping in a little bit, but she knows that she can be a morning person because words are spells. Yeah. So why would we limit ourselves? And we do this unknowingly. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we do it on purpose, self-sabotaging, but even then sometimes it's subconsciously unknowing, or self-sabotaging. And that's what we're really doing. When we can be creating everything, because we're created in the creator's image, it means we're creators. Everything that's in our environment can be created by us. And we can only control how we move through it. So I choose to move through it in a way that's not with some of these other landmines there. I just move them out of the way, and I can create things. So it's harmonious for me. That's what matters. Because if I'm good, then it can radiate to others. I can be of service to others. Mm-hmm. But it comes here first.
I love it.
Words are spells.
They really are. They really are. And we're casting them all day long, and we're listening. We're choosing which ones to give power to and who to give power over. And
right.
We got some more comments coming in from the crew in here. Thank you so much to everybody that's hanging out with us. Lauren, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And so does everybody else. She says, how does Iboga compare to other psychedelics?
Well, Iboga is different. So Iboga is not a true psychedelic. Like we said, it's a neurogenic. So, which Latin means to dream and to create. So it's more like when you're in the Iboga experience. It's more like a waking dream. It's sort of how things appear. They can be super visual, or it can be very auditory, or you can feel like nothing is happening at all. And your mind is totally blank and still, which is really weird for people, and people struggle with, and they actually think they're doing something wrong when that happens. Like sometimes we'll check on someone and say, hey, how you doing? And they'll be like, there's nothing happening. I mean, like for me, that's great. I mean, how often is your mind quiet?
Yeah.
Like, well, never. I'll like enjoy your space, so it can things can come to people in just a very insightful way, where they just sort of are just getting all these realizations. And Iboga is direct. Sometimes we can do guided journeys with people, where we can help people sort of ask very specific questions, like, why do I have my addiction to whatever? And they will just get an answer. Well, that's because, of the abuse of your mother when you were 12 years old. I mean, that's how it will work. So, and they're always simple. The answers are short and they're simple. We know when people's mind is interfering, when the answer becomes complex and they have to describe it.
Yeah. And here's another thing too. So with Iboga, it's always going to be about you. Mm-hmm. About you. So, if you want to know, how do I deal with my mother-in-law? She's so out there or whatever, and like, how do I deal with her? Because it's affecting our relationship and everything else.
Not ours, though.
Not ours. My mother-in-law is pretty cool.
To my mom.
You're great, Mom. But it's a real thing sometimes, or whoever it is. And a lot of medicines, they'll show you this person and what they're like, and all this creativity part of it. And that's really a lot to do with the DMT molecule that's in there. Iboga is just going to show you mm-hmm. and how you're dealing with her. Not about her, it's about you. Mm-hmm. See, that's the part with the heaviness with this medicine. It can get heavy because it's about you. Mm-hmm. What about my addiction? It's about you. Mm-hmm. What about this? About you. And how are you moving through it? And what are you doing? What have you done? And what aren't you doing? And what should you be doing? Mm-hmm. And what are you doing right? Mm-hmm. It's always going to be about you. So that can be the heavy thing.
Yeah.
And so that is, how it differs a lot, because it's not a true hallucinogenic in that sense. But like I say, it can show us everything and above and whatnot, because it's very intellectual. Mm-hmm. And, they'll refer to, I as the mother or the grandmother, say, so to speak, everyone's got some kind of a feminine or masculine disposition, and they'll refer to Iboga as the grandfather or father. But really, it's a duality. It's got male and female spirit. It's a perfect balance. And some of the biggest lessons I've learned from Iboga were spanked to me by the grandmother, the spirit of Iboga. I tell you, don't get those feminine spirits mad at you, man. No. Don't do it. So hopefully that answers Lauren's question, because I believe all the medicines are here to help us, mm-hmm. And they all can work together, with the right amount of space. In Africa with the Bwiti, when they use this medicine, they use other medicines too. There's a whole jungle of pharmacopoeia, mm-hmm. and they use them at different times, but to give space around everything in its time so it can be used properly and respectfully. Yeah.
It's like, for them, Iboga is just part of a whole, right? So they like when you do an initiation, they will give you another plant with the Iboga to help you remember your initiation, because you are taking such a big dose, so much medicine, they don't want you to forget your journey. So they give you mm-hmm. a plant with it that is also very bitter, by the way, and does not make the Iboga taste any better.
No.
Yeah, you eat that with it, and it helps you remember.
You sure do.
So, you know, for them, they've been using this medicine for thousands of years. Who knows how long? Thousands for sure. And so they used it, you know, if you think back way, way, way back then, there was no distractions in the sense of TVs and phones. And I mean, if you weren't doing anything, you literally were just sitting there looking at the jungle or contemplating how this galaxy works and wondering what all these plants do. And so they used Iboga to help them discover what these plants did. You know, so that's how they know. And like Patrick and I are like, when you did our introduction, we have a title of Ganga. And what that means is that if you go and you do an initiation in Gabon, you will be called a Ganga. So that means you're just, you know, you're learning to be a healer. And then they have another one above that. And I just blanked on it. What's it called?
Nima?
Nima, yeah.
Sure.
Thanks.
But there's different levels of the Ganga.
Yeah, there's different levels, but to be a Nima, you have to know at like a minimum like 2,000 plants in that jungle. So to understand like the complexity and the knowledge of the tradition that's what that is. It's the knowing and understanding of that jungle and how they need to use it to survive and heal and do what they need to do spiritually, physically, mentally. So it kind of like, we went out the first year we were there and we were collecting some herbs or, you know, pieces of bark and plants and whatever. And as I was walking through like the jungle with these ladies, I'm like thinking about like when the French came in to, you know, take over, and like how, you know, like these labels of like, you know, them like being unintelligent and not advanced. And I'm like, how would you have even ever thought that? Like they know everything in that jungle, like everything. Like we have to tell them, only show us these plants, like, because I'm not going to remember if you show me every plant we walk by. Like, show me the ones that we need for like the spiritual showers, right? Like, show me just those 20, 30 plants, please. Because like they're like encyclopedias of knowledge. They're like so intelligent and connected to the space they live. And it's so beautiful to witness that. It's hard for me to describe. I'm not like poetic in my speech, but it's so hard for me to describe that, just that awe in that understanding. If I go out in the forest, I know what an evergreen tree is. you know, I might recognize sage, or I might recognize, you know, something pretty basic, but I don't have any intimate knowledge of the place I live, which is kind of sad, but you know, that's the truth of it.
That's good.
Yeah.
How can you know yourself if you don't know your environment? And when you start thinking about people that thoroughly know their environment, it sounds to me like they thoroughly know who they are. It speaks volumes of the ailments we have in our society right here. Right. I want to introduce both of you to an incredible individual right here. Friend of the show, friend of mine, Robert Sean Davis. He says, post-traumatic growth opportunity, preach it, brother. But here's where he gets into some deep stuff, and don't be ready. I have the greatest audience in the world. So after this show, you guys might get a 5-page summary about the whole aspect of some awesome thoughts and places you've never been before. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, an incredible audience. This guy particularly, Robert, he's going to be on the show soon. He says, I love the reinforcement that the medicine has natural properties that stimulate organic healing, removing the need of external imprinting as part of recovery. Amazing testimony, and appreciate your celebration of the power of self-healing. I'm curious how often you see unexpected side effects of an awakening during a reset, especially given the gifts that can accompany what is almost a mini sanctification process that parallels a near-death experience.
That's
I got the greatest audience,
Wow.
right?
Good question.
I think it's hard to describe. So we had a sorry.
You go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So we had a guest recently, and so a month ago, and we spoke to her just a few days ago, and she's like, "I'm like, my mind is still blown. I can't, like, my mind is still blown because it's like Iboga just knew things that I needed to know before I did ceremony, and it was telling me that before. It was like saying to her, she had this sense of, she was saying, it's just saying, just wait, you know. And she's like, how did it know? Like, it has to know these things, like, you know. It's really hard to describe to somebody who's not experienced it. And that was one of the reasons why we created the community, because it's hard to share what that's like. Because words fail you completely in its understanding.
You know, and some of these shifts are like super incredible, super meaningful, like just distinguishable. You know, it's very palpable, and yet, you know, like, you know, this lady would also said, I didn't even know I needed to ask for that stuff, and it just gave it to me. It's like I wasn't even aware it was in my field, and what an immense shift. And she noticed it in her everyday life, of how she's moving through with more grace and more poeticness and more joy. And then you have other people who come through, and it's not this big, profound shift, but what they get are these little pebbles that are thrown in the pond that create these little ripples.
Yep.
And the ripple effect, I mean, those are mountainous. You know, you can create a tsunami from this one ripple, and it will deeply affect your life. And you might not notice it right now, but when you reflect in a year from now, or even 5 years from now, you're like, whoa. If you're listening, you'll see, you can hear it. But a lot of times we're still learning how to navigate through this new way of being, because it can be a real new way of being of our true selves, right? And we've forgotten how to act in our own true body, so we don't always hear it, but it's there, and we notice it kind of after the fact. And so, you know, there's a lot of awakenings that happen slowly, but some happen like really, you know, quite a lot, you know. And you get both, which is beautiful, because it's not just a cookie cutter. It's very individual for what you need. And, you know, and some people need to have that boom. They need to have it to get through, you know, and some can handle that other part of it, which is kind of slowly develops like this beautiful, beautiful flower, you know, like a lotus. So it's I love the way it does that. You're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna read her quote, which I thought was so funny when she said this. She said, the medicine is just baffling, and I love it so much. It's like a friend that you get into an argument with, and then 2 days later, you're best friends again, and you can't even remember why you were fighting.
It's so true.
Yeah, no, that's a shift.
Yeah.
So because, you know, sometimes you don't want what it's showing you. You're like, I don't want to be responsible for my life. You know, I don't want it to be me that was the problem. I wanted to blame my mother or my father or my social life or whatever it was. And the medicine's like, well, let me just take you here. And you're like, no. And but then you have to admit that, okay, that's okay, that's true.
No, and that whole being responsible, it reminds me of this study that was done many, many years ago. So I'm an identical twin. And so the story always sat with me, and I remembered it. And they asked there was two twins. One was living in Kingston, Ontario, and one's on the coast on Western Canada. And they asked the one on Western Canada, said, like, so I'm looking at you and you're successful, and how do you contribute to who you are? He said, well, if you would have known my father, you wouldn't even have to ask. Oh, okay. And they asked the other twin over in Kingston, Ontario, So what do you contribute to where you are right now? And he looks around his jail cell and he goes, well, if you know my father, you wouldn't have to ask.
Whoa.
Right? So one's a victim and one's overcome. Now, I don't know what the backstory was. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. But what matters is how we move through it. Because there's a lot of people who are born as children of, say, alcoholics or people with lots of substance abuse and lots of anger, lots of things. And the nice part is those children don't have to grow up to be like that. Now, it's not always easy at all. I'm not going to take that away from anyone's journey because that can be really hard. But you still get to choose. I've heard people say, I'm never going to do that because my dad did that and I'm not doing that. And guess what? They don't do it. And I was like, well, that's what my dad did, so that's what I'm doing, and it's like letting them off easy. So it's being accountable to yourself, which can be the hardest thing, but the most rewarding thing.
I do. I hear a lot of, and I think that everybody struggles with this. I know I do too, is like the relationship between like self-worth, self-love, and self-importance. I think so many of these particular medicines, and maybe you could speak to the idea of how Iboga helps you deal with those ideas of self-worth, self-love, and self-importance.
Well, I think like for me, sorry, one of the things Iboga showed me was I was laying, I'd taken medicine, I'm laying down with the medicine, and I'm, waiting for Iboga to show me something or talk to me in some way. And I'm trying to like keep my mind clear and be open, and I think I'm doing a really good job. And then in the music, I hear, think it, think it, think it, think it. And then it's like this like veil like opens, like, the curtains part, and it's all the stories in the back of my mind that are just like running the show, which really pissed me off because a lot of them were things I thought I dealt with, they were like things that I thought like I wasn't doing anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, yeah, no, so I think it just comes down to this. It just comes down to those stories and understanding what they are. And understanding how they impact your life and how much time you waste, how much energy you give to them, and how exhausting that is.
Yeah.
That to me is like one of the most, for me, that was like profound. And so, and then I have to catch myself now after that. I would recognize like, so what I was in a very, very toxic relationship before Patrick, the father of my kids, and for like 17 years. And so very controlling and verbally abusive, that sort of thing. So I, in my mind, would create stories as to why I did everything. Why am I having a shower right now? Right? Because for a long time I had to justify why I did things. So, but I was still doing it like years later and not really realizing I was doing it. And so then I had to catch myself. Why am I making this, like, why am I wasting time thinking about Patrick does not care why I'm having a shower? I could have 3 showers in one day. Maybe that's kind of odd, but whatever, You know what I mean? Like, that's not an issue. So why am I creating justifications and stories around it? And is that what I want to do with my time when I'm like, is that where I want my thoughts to go? So in the beginning, you have to catch it. Yeah. And it's that awareness.
Yep.
And sometimes people think when that awareness now is present that now, oh, I'm more broken than I thought I was. Or, oh, I'm doing it wrong. Or I'm not healing. I haven't healed because I see all this stuff now that in my mind. We're like, no, that's the point. The point is that you see it, so now you can make a choice.
Mhm.
And now it comes back to choice again. So you make a choice. Oh, that thought came up. Oh yeah, okay, whatever. And a good friend of ours, Katie, she says, I give my brain a name. Like whatever it is, Matilda the Hun. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so you stop identifying with it.
Mhm.
It's not who you are.
Yeah. And with that, like, and she's saying, like, you gotta kind of practice those things. It doesn't just, you can end up seeing more of it. People sometimes, not always, but sometimes people think you do a big plant medicine, you're gonna have this aha moment, be enlightened, be woke, woke, and the whole 9 yards. And in the essence, yes, we end up waking up, we end up remembering, we end up seeing who our true selves are. We're shown, like she was shown, this is who you are, this is what you're doing. Even though you're like the unconscious traveler, now you're a conscious traveler. Now you can see it. And I had friends say to me one time, some people who are participating, well, I just, maybe I should just sit there and bask in it and really get to know all my dark side and all this stuff that's being shown to me. I said, well, yeah, it's being shown to you so you can see what it is. But the idea is to be able to move through it, in it, and because of it, and moving forward. And they're like, but what if I want to just bask in it? I said, well, it's kind of like this, and I'll make this the TV edit version. And I says it's kind of like you're walking through with Iboga, and all of a sudden you're like, what is that? You look down and you're standing in a pile of a landmine, so in a pile of shit, right?
Right.
And this landmine, so much for TV edit, right? But you're standing in this pile of it, and you're like, oh my goodness. I said, what are you doing? He goes, I don't know. I said, well, you have two choices. One, you can bask in it and rub it all over yourself and get to know it intimately and taste it and make a sandwich out of it and really know it. Like really get to know it, become it, know it. Or you can choose to step out of it. He goes, well, okay, makes sense. I said, but what happens if I step in it again? Step out of it again. And he said, well, how often do I have to do this? I kid you not. How often do I have to, when stuff comes up? Because it's supposed to be healed. Do I have to step out of it? As often as you step into it until you learn to navigate around these landmines, because life is never going to stop throwing landmines in your way. But you can become a great navigator through, it's like, like sailing a boat. You can become a great navigator through life storms because it's never going to stop. And so it's either happening to you or for you. Again,
Yeah.
And when we take these medicines, it helps us really see. So we can, all of a sudden, you go home 2 months later and people are like, oh, I'm so depressed. Things just aren't the way they were when I left the retreat. I was like on top of the world. Now everything seems awful. Like it's like it's happening even more to me now. There's even more of this. And I go, because you're seeing it now. Seeing it. So every time you see it, step away from it, step around it, move through it. Don't sit there, don't be caught in that loop again. And that's our responsibility, and we have that responsibility in life anyways. But if you're going to take a powerful psychedelic and plant medicine to heal yourself, to become a better version of yourself, then be ready to move through these things as a responsibility with that. You don't get to just open up this can and go, well, good, I'm just going to put it over here now. And life's going to go on.
Once you know, you know.
Once you know. And that's empowering. That's empowering. And within that can become joy, because every time you go around and you see this thing, you're like, oh, thanks for reminding me that I'm not that person anymore. You know, I have things that come to me and like, you know, that I worked through, and I'm like, oh, yeah, nope, that's not me. I'm not that person anymore. And that's so much joy because I'm not trapped in that anymore, you know? And so that's empowering. That's gratitude. You know, lets me live in joy. You know, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really, really well said. You know, I can smell what I'm stepping in.
You know, we have a choice, and you gotta you just keep stepping out of it. You know,
Yeah.
become good at this.
Yeah, it's a gift to get to see it and be aware of it. Like you mentioned the word awareness, and like that word alone really opens your eyes. You know, a lot of times we'll talk about altered states of awareness, and Michele said it too. Like once you know, you can never go back. Like you're given the gift of seeing it and realize that it's a gift. It's painful, it's hard to carry, but it is a gift. And once you learn how to be aware of it, then you can learn how be aware of how to navigate through it. I think it was a brilliant way you described it there, and I think it speaks volumes of why the two of you are a great team and good at what you're doing right there. Thank you for that. It was really well said.
Well, you know, we all like it's been said for years, like for decades. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that phrase, and that's what these medicines give us is knowledge. So that's power.
But not necessarily math and science and book reading, the knowledge of ourselves.
The knowledge of ourselves.
And I think that's the key difference. And we can know things intellectually, you know, and a lot of people when they come to us, they're at a point where they're like, I know all this stuff. Like I know, you know, especially when we have somebody that comes to us, say it's a therapist. You know, and a lot of times that's why they do therapies, because they're trying to heal something in themselves and they want to learn, how can I do it for myself and how can I help others, right? So, and they're like, so I know all this stuff, but I still can't figure it out. And somehow when we take these medicines, and Iboga for us, I mean, it's the one we love the most. So it's like, you know, when we take this medicine, it moves that knowledge from intellectual into deeper knowing, into understanding. It helps us process in a deeper way what it is. And and that's the difference between Iboga and talk therapy. You know, when people talk, I've been in therapy for 20 years and I did more in that week with Iboga than I did and all that talk therapy. Well, that's because your therapist can't go in your mind and show you what's going on in there and fade the veil between the conscious and the subconscious, where the actual programming is in that subconscious mind. I mean, most of our decisions are made back there and we're totally unaware of them. You know, and so Iboga and other plant medicines that allow us to, I shouldn't say plant because there's a lot of different varieties of medicine, but these other medicines that allow us to step behind that veil a little bit so we can understand more about who we are and what makes us tick.
Something to be said about the language of experience. And I often think about when the instrument becomes an institution, it loses its ability to work. And it seems like in the Western world, we've done that. We've institutionalized learning. We've institutionalized the experience of other people, which are just these stories. But I don't care. I mean, I'm so grateful for the people that have gone and learned so much. But on some level, what is your experience? Like tell me your suffering. Let me see. I know I've read those same books, but they do not describe the experience in a way that you can thoroughly understand it. You must have the experience before you begin teaching anybody anything. And it seems like in the West, we've probably out of a road of great intentions and an opportunity to give back, to be inclusive. Like, let's let everybody do this. Like, okay, but where are the filters? You know, weak filters create weak leaders, and weak leaders lead people off of cliffs. Like, you have to have the experience of it, and only you will interpret that experience different. And like, that's where on some level, I think you begin to understand what it means to to understand the language of nature. Is that too harsh of a critique on education, do you think?
No.
Good, thank you.
It's very true in a lot of ways, you know? It
Yeah.
actually is, you know?
I mean, we need practical knowledge.
We do, of course. We need both.
Yeah, but we're forgetting the deeper knowledge. We're forgetting, inner knowing. We're forgetting wisdom.
Mm.
We're consuming knowledge and not sitting in wisdom. And wisdom takes time. And we live in a society where everything is instant, and we celebrate youth only.
Mm.
Then we forget that, really the best parts of our life come later, when we're not so consumed with our identity, and not so consumed with our social life, and not so consumed with building whatever it is we think we need or want. And then as we get older, we start shifting into really understanding what's important. And we can't do that all at once. We have to go through the process. And so we've forgotten, in Western culture anyway, to listen to our elders. We've forgotten, we really forget how important they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I read this thing a little while back, and it was like, there's only like 4 mammals or something in the animal kingdom that go through menopause. Humans being one of them. And that's how important wisdom is. That's how important it is for us to have elders, us to have people that are no longer focused on creating the future, but teaching the future. Because you need to be at that stage in your life to be able to teach. You need to have had lived life
Mm-hmm.
to teach about life. You can't do it when you're 20. You can understand things and have knowledge when you're 20 and 30, but you really don't take away the beauty of aging, right? Don't take away the beauty of accumulating all these experiences. That's why we become human in the first place, to have these experiences. Why else are we here? We don't get them instant. That's why there's time. That's why we live in this linear world where we feel the effects of time, and we age, and we do all these things that we think we don't want to do, but they're to teach us things, and to show us how to experience, to really understand what things are and what's really, really important. And with all, I think it's so pronounced now with all the craziness in the world, and maybe this has happened in generations before, right? Where we've had big shifts, but, we can really see there's left and right, and, whatever, woke and unwoke, and all these labels of division.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is that asking of us? Why is that so pronounced right now? What is that truly asking of us? Is that asking us to divide even more? Is that asking us to love one another?
Mm-hmm. Why are these things coming up for us now?
Yeah.
Now we're at a time in our culture, in our civilization, where we need to remember back.
And we have people who are in their wisdom years acting like they're in their 20s, because for some reason we've dismissed that so much that they feel like they don't have value unless they're pretending to be something they're not anymore. It's these are and I think these are the important questions, and this is what we need to be looking at when we're thinking about elders and we're thinking about spiritual education.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who's teaching me? Who am I going? Am I going to somebody who is my same age? Or am I learning from somebody that has greater wisdom because life has happened? So, and I'm not dismissing youth, because we need the youth because they have great ideas, right?
Mhm.
They think, when we're young, we kick against the system and we want to, create better things, right? But we don't devalue then, moving through the different seasons in our life, because being young is fun.
Yeah.
And it's important too. Yeah.
And it's important, but so is the wisdom. And so I think this is what we have to be looking at. And there's a lot of bypassing right now because plant medicine has become trendy. And these medicines are they have such potential, and people are so desperate for them that they're too quickly either going into the experiences without really understanding what they're asking or doing, or they're too quickly wanting to become a provider and serve these medicines when they've only had minimal experience and haven't really figured out their own stuff yet. And not that we ever really figure it all out. That's not the point. But there is a certain deepening, I think, that we need to have patience for, and it's okay. And I think when we're working with these medicines, it should take, years, like a decade or two, to become, we should be students for a long, long time before we really start trying to guide anyone else. So.
I love that. It's so well said. It's so well said. And yeah. It's so sad to me to see, on the topic of elders, like, and this fascination with youth, being young. I want to live forever. I want to be young forever. Like, look at what we do in the West. Like, we've gotten so far away. Like, we put our elders in like a care home somewhere because we don't want to see them because it's so hard. Oh, my mom can't get out of bed. Well, maybe you should take care of her in her bed. Maybe, maybe she can teach you a lot of things by, like, the story you talked about your mom with arthritis. What do you learn from an elder who has cancer and see the pain that they go through and losing their ability to walk? Like, what do you as an individual learn by, oh my God, I need to take care of them? Maybe you need to quit your job. Maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you need to figure out, like, oh my God, this is teaching me what I have to look forward to. This is teaching me what I need to do in my life. Like, maybe we should stop turning away from our responsibilities to the elders and the youth and start doing things that matter. But the demands of the Western society to have the nice car, buy the house. Oh, you want to have kids? You better have this much money. Oh, you got to go to the right school. No, you don't have this degree. Like, we've gotten so far away from the things that really matter. And there's no wonder we have a manual called the DMS-5. We're all going crazy over here. We're running away from the very things that would free us. We're running east looking for a sunset.
That's right.
Yeah.
And nobody has really ever accomplished things by turning away from what's happening. They embrace it. They go with it. They use it. They get the inertia going with it. It's that old thing, life hands you a bunch of lemons. Put them on the side and let's go have some apple juice. You make lemonade out of it. When life hands you this, what are you going to do with it? It's here for a reason.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that comes with age, with that maturity part of it. And like Michelle says, sure, there's a lot of youth who have really got it going on.
A lot.
And kudos. I mean, thank God for that. These are these young thinkers who are going to lead the way. These are going to be our leaders. And we can learn from them too. And it's like, I'm never too old to learn.
Yeah.
Ever. I don't want to stop learning. What then? I'll just get old. What good is being an elder if you're like Grandpa Simpson just sitting there, doing nothing on the couch? I mean, I'm like, nah,
Yeah.
So there's lots to learn, and it's there for us, put in our way every day for us to use. And because of it and for it and everything, life is great.
Yeah.
If you let it.
I got a great question coming in here from my friend Clint. Clint Kyle is the Psychedelic Christian podcast. I want you to check it out. The guy does great work, and I love talking to him. He's an amazing guy. Check out his podcast for those that are listening. He says, how do we ensure that the Western thirst for healing does not become another form of spiritual colonization? We have the best audience in the world.
That's a good question, right? You know?
I think it's keeping it simple. And I think Iboga, that is one of, again, a lesson Iboga teaches us is it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be hard to be worthy. It doesn't have to, we overcomplicate things. Just keep it simple, you know, and really, what is it you really need?
You know, one thing when I first came into working with the traditional component of Iboga, I thought, okay, what is this tradition? The Bwiti, it's in Africa. Like, I have no idea. Like, I'm going to keep my feelers out. I'm going to pay attention because I have my core beliefs that I was brought up with, and you know, my faith and everything else. I'm like, what is all this about? And you know what I saw? I saw this tradition, not a religion, this tradition of the Bwiti that serves the Iboga. Bwiti is just simply the study of life, your life. It talks about truths. And one thing I kept watching things and seeing things. I'm like, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's true. And you know something? What is true for me is true for somebody in, like, if it's true. So let's talk about in this day and age and technology. That's a cell phone. And you get somebody in Africa, that's a cell phone. You get someone in the Buddhist community, that's a cell phone. You get the point. Truth is truth. And that's what I saw. And if we keep it to that, and it's not about dogma, you know, when they have ceremonies in Africa, in Gabon, they have a temple, right? And it's got a post in the middle, and it's just like this with a post in the middle. You go in one side and come out the other side of the front. Doors are never closed. There's no doors. There's no doors. And you can come as you want. You can leave when you want and come back and go, come back and go, come back and go. And no one's ever going to tell you how long you have to stay there. No one's ever going to tell you how you have to act. You just have to be reverent. Be reverent. You know, be truthful. Be true to yourself. There's no dogma attached. You know, we see that over here. And I'm going to get really unpopular with all the people in your podcast land, but we bastardize all these dogmas over here. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, or this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And, you know, when you get back to the truths of things, that's what's really important, you know? And we just have to remember, go back to being what is true, what is truthful. Authentic version of yourself. Because, you know, we're all spiritual beings having a physical experience. And on that spiritual level, there's a balance point where everyone is on the same frequency. It's everything else that's put to stories around that change things, that dampen or strengthen the signals that are coming from there or whatever, you know, these stories. So
yeah. And I think that's a profound question, because that's, you know, Patrick and I are quite protective, you know, of the medicine when we can be like, you know, careful of who we recommend to other people and
Yes.
you know, that kind of thing. So, and safety, we're super, you know, stringent on what we need to do for safety. So I think when you're looking at providers, or when you're looking at retreats or places to go for these spiritual things, one of the things that is a good way to know is, are they empowering you? Are the people you're going to focused on empowering you or empowering themselves? And I think that's the line, you know. So if we look at even how Iboga is, it's never taking your choice away, right? So it's empowering you, and it's never going to tell you what to do. So people will ask, I go, should I, you know, move to a different city? And I will go, well, you do you. Whatever. So you have to start, you know, you have to sometimes get creative with these questions and just say, like, do I want to move? You know, so if you're going to somebody that's telling you what your journey meant, or is telling you, oh, the medicine told me to tell you this. Well, why is the medicine talking through that person to you? No. The medicine's going to talk to you through you, not through someone else. And they can maybe guide you. You know, the point of going to a provider or being like for what Patrick and I do, the point of us is to help you through the process of your own healing, of your own journey, and not to try to shift you from where you're at, not to tell you, a better way, but to allow you to have the experience and to come to the conclusion of what that experience means to you, for you. I don't need to be, telling people what their journey meant for them. I don't know. That's for you to decide.
That's right.
So I think it's taking that step back, and it's like taking that ego out. I'm not here as your healer. I'm not here as someone telling you what to do. I'm here to support you and maybe, give you an arm while you walk your journey, but I'm not here to tell you what that journey is.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you this little hoe, this little apparatus, mechanical tool, and I'll hold the ladder for you, but you're getting up there cleaning your own gutters out. I'm going to help you so you don't fall. I might recommend a few things of how to use that thing the right way, but you're going to do the work.
So I think, I think it is something we're going to have to be very mindful of as mainstream kind of gets a hold of it, and people,
That's why it's so important to have the traditions come out and be really understood and be talked about in these kind of manners, so people can understand, and we're not experts in Bwiti by any means.
No.
We're students, but, we do speak of what we know and how to honor this medicine, how to honor this tradition, how to honor ourselves, how to honor each other. They have a Bwiti truth, and it says, if you abuse nature, the price is misery, but you are nature. Right? That's a heavy one, because we don't think of it sometimes, especially those of us who are caught up in all this go, achieve. That's how a lot of us we've gone through our cultures growing up, and we forget, we're out of touch. Now, if we talk and listen to some of our ancestors, and we listen to some of our elders, if we're actually listening, we'll remember, and we can hear them like, no, hang on. Remember this stuff. Stop, smell the roses. That's an old term, right? And do this. Take your socks off and shoes off and put your toes in the sand. Things that our parents would have told us. These are important things as we're moving through life, to enjoy it. And not to abuse it. Just think, if we didn't abuse it and we enjoyed nature, we'd enjoy ourselves a lot more. There's such a cohesiveness for us and our nature and the whole environment around us. It really is.
Yeah. You can learn so much. I think it's the best teacher. Like, you can learn more from a battered coastline or a waterfall than you can from 8 years of instruction. And if you're really willing to sit down and just, being in Hawaii for so long, I remember I'd go to the bay and we would go snorkeling, and then I'd just come back, and my daughter and my wife would be swimming. I would just sit there and be like, look at all this erosion, man. Like, this used to be like this little piece of sand used to be part of that mountain right there. Am I part of the sand? Like, what part? Am I the mountain or am I the sand? Like, what is the erosion's happening inside me right now? Like, you just start having all these revelations of like, oh, the world's talking to me right now. Like, and it's so magical to get to reconnect with the spirit and the language of nature that's all around you, desperately trying to get your attention through the song of a bird or a tree, or sometimes the speck the speck of dust floating through some light, like you see these profound visions all the time if you're just willing to pay attention. And they're like, hey, look, I got to show you something. Check this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the stillness, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's some of the beauty of doing these medicines. It helps us
Yeah.
to it.
Mhm.
And that's where it can start.
Mhm. Yeah. It helps us be still. It helps us slow down. Yeah. To reconnect.
It's so well said. The idea of, and I like the word remembering. Thank you for bringing that up. Like it's been coming I see it everywhere. And maybe that's just a sign of the times for what we need to be doing. But just think about that word remembering, like we're putting ourselves back together, and it speaks volumes of the shift we've been talking about and the reconnection of the youth to the elders and the people in midlife as the bridge between them. And like, I really am seeing so many positive shifts in the remembering of society. And maybe that's why it seems so difficult right now, because we are trying to remember. There's a large part of people that are moving on to the next phase of whatever comes next. And there's anxiety, and there's this youth coming up like, where's my mentor? Where's my teacher? How come this teacher didn't teach me? Like, we're really trying to remember what's happening and how to move through these times of change. And it speaks to the rites of passage, like the things that you help people through. And we've been spiritually devoid of these rites of passage and ceremonies. And it's so beautiful and elegant when you see it coming together. And it gives me so much faith in what's happening in the future. And whether you're speaking out or you're building something, like it's such a critical time that we're in right now. How did the two of you feel about this time we're in right now?
Well, I think for people in the West, I think we're realizing that, for me anyway, I'm realizing that we've been too comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I'm sitting in, sometimes I'd just be like, have a moment and I'd just be sitting there in Gabon at the village that we go to, and I'm looking around, and there's a well now for the village, but when we first went there was no well. And so they had to go to a river to get water and bring it back. And, there's like, you have like one light in a room, there's no washing machine, and there's no dishwasher, and, all these things. And you're like, our tolerance for discomfort is so low that everything is uncomfortable, because things are so simple and we don't realize, and not that they're bad, we don't have to get rid of them. I'm certainly not saying get rid of all the washing machines and laundry, no, I don't want to go back to washing my clothes at the river, but make yourself uncomfortable. Put your, like learning, when we learn things, there's a period of discomfort between not knowing and knowing. There's like that transition period. And that's what's powerful about medicines too, these spiritual medicines, that they make us uncomfortable for a reason. There's this period of discomfort that needs to happen for us to understand and to build tolerance to life. So that's why exercise, that's why people do extreme things, right? Because they're looking for the discomfort to build their tolerance to life. Right? When we're working out in the gym and we're lifting weights, there's periods of discomfort so that we can build muscle. We have to tear that muscle down to then repair it and build it better and bigger, right? So it's built into the system and in all things. So and I think that's why mental health too is another thing, another layer on that mental health thing, and why you don't see it in places where there's like extreme poverty, where there's discomfort all around people. So they have a massive tolerance to being uncomfortable, and they find happiness in it. Right? But when you're so comfortable, then, the guy slamming his brakes on in front of you unexpectedly, angers you to the point of, road rage. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, why is that happening? Because we have no tolerance for discomfort. But really, we shouldn't care. I mean, you go to like, you watch them drive in Gabon. I don't think it's as bad as India. But you're like, or, Costa Rica, we lived there for a little while, and it's like, whoa, that's some interesting road rules or lack thereof. Where if that happened here, people would go insane.
Lose their minds, yeah.
They'd be like out of their cars, like hitting each other, and they're just like, Vida.
Yeah. Resilience is born from resistance. Resilience is born out of resistance. What else is born out of resistance? Oh, some of the most beautiful diamonds in the world are born from the resistance and that pressure. So when life starts getting too much and all this pressure is happening to me, just try to remember, well, something really good is about to happen. There's going to be a real shift. Something good's going to come out of this, because that's where the most brilliant diamonds coming from, is that resistance. That resilience is born out of resistance.
So I think that's kind of like what's happening right now. It's a forced discomfort for us to grow.
I mean, it's an uncertain time. There's a lot of crap going on. People don't know whether they should travel or not, what they should do. But we're just kind of on the cusp. Something is going to happen. I mean, it has to. And it's going to be good, bad, or indifferent. But the one thing we know for sure to be totally true, when we've taken medicine and we've seen there's no wrong choice. What's he saying? Mean there's no wrong choice? We just had an election here. What do you mean there's no wrong choice? As long as you choose. So let's say I choose door A instead of door B. And I choose door A, and it's something like rotten pizza. I don't know, whatever. And I could have picked the cake behind door B. Well, it's not necessarily a wrong choice. It's obviously something I'm learning. I need to learn. So what have I learned from choosing this door or this opportunity? You can choose something. You can choose that, okay, this is what this is like here. Oh yeah. I know what I'd really like to be. I know how I'd really like to have this. And you can start giving gratitude and being thankful for this remembering of what it is what I desire. Instead of like, oh man, I got that again. It's like, oh, poor me. No, it's all, there's no wrong choices. But you have to make a choice. And I see that in today's society right now. There's a lot of things happening. And we have a choice. I mean, when we went through COVID, I remember the first time we came down off our hill, into town, it was like a ghost town. It was like some creepy movie from Silent Hill. I mean, oh my God, right? It was like really unnerving.
Because nurses still had to go to work.
Yeah. Right? And I'm like, this is an opportunity for people to stop, slow down, and reevaluate things. Now, some did and some didn't. And that's just the way it is. That's human nature.
Yeah.
But it was a time where we had the choice. We can't go out, we can't do this, can't do that. What do we do? Oh, we have to sit by ourselves with ourselves. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And we heard that, by no fault of their own. We heard that complaining because it's difficult, but that's where growth can happen. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people who came out of that with a lot more love and understanding and, forgiveness to a lot of people that differ from them. And that was important. So that's where we are now with all these different shifts that are happening. And we can sit there, we can complain, well, he's doing this and he's doing that. And oh my gosh. Okay. So, yeah, but what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
Okay, he's doing that, but I'm choosing right now to live my best life. I was to share a quick story. I was like 13 years old around there. And I knew I was around 13 because I had a chip in my shoulder and I was like right here. And it was pretty big. It was 13-year-old boys have, is chip on the shoulder. And I was doing something, I don't know. We were working with my dad and doing something, and I'm over, I think, fixing my hair, whatever, I don't know. And my dad, it's like, he said something, get back to work. And I gave him some attitude, and because I was that chip. And he said, listen, young man, the world does not revolve around you. Now, in that moment, I knew what he meant. And that changed how I responded in life, and wasn't being so self-absorbed and blah blah blah, and took people's feelings into account, and I did plant medicine as an adult. I'm like, hang on, Dad, my world does revolve around me. Everything I choose to be in this world of mine revolves around me. I can't control what's going on, but I can control how I'm going to move through it. So it's either going to be in my circle of influence, or it will not be in my circle of influence, And so I learned to think a little differently. So I see things going around now. So, okay, so what am I going to do? In the meantime, with all this happening, how do I act? How do I treat my neighbor?
Yeah.
How do I treat someone else who voted for some different party? Oh my God, how do I do that? How can I ever talk to them again? They voted a whole different party than I voted for.
Oh my God.
We can't even be friends anymore. I know you're my twin brother, but how can we even do this? How do I move through it? So it gives us that moment we can reflect back and go, okay, so in this moment, I choose to live like this. And that's going to make a difference. If we all do that, it would make a big difference. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's like the story of one of the favorite things I love about storytelling and getting to hear the experience and stories that were told to other people is the mind shift of the culture, or the mindset of the culture that we grew up in. Like, and you can see it in the different generations. Like, hey, the world doesn't revolve around you. Like, there's so much beautiful morality in that, but at the same point in time, it doesn't really fit for the world we're moving into. And I'm not judging it or anything like that, but it's just like, wow, no one, okay, that sheds a light onto how a generation was brought up. And of course the rules are going to be in that direction. Like, and it, if you can just sit with it and not hold it as true or untrue, you can be like, oh, that's a real insight into how a large portion of the world thinks. And if they think that, then maybe I could adjust this way, or maybe I could shift it this way. But that's just the power of storytelling, and recounting these stories that happen to us at a young age allow insight into so many people and so many different things. And that's a big part of the ceremony. And it's listening to the stories of the people that came before you. Like, now we're back to the elders, and we're back to the real learning done in front of the fire, where people are listening, and maybe the kids are over here at this table, but they have one ear up because they want to hear what the adults have to say, and don't about this part right here. And the kids, they want to hear that part more than anything, but it's the real community learning aspect that I'm really eager to be part of and do on some level. But yeah, that answers my question perfectly. And that being said, I got some more questions coming in. Robert chiming in over here. Robert, thanks again so much for always being here, man. I truly appreciate your friendship and coming in with such brilliant questions. He says, in my experience related to abuse, healing medicines allow for a perception where the harshest adversities we experience are part of a process that creates higher gifts. Outside of time, we then understand tremendous gratitude and appreciation, seeing an eternal perspective. Then when you see abusers as loving volunteers participating on a lineage basis, it facilitates the space for true forgiveness and recovery. That's pretty deep right there. And I think, right? Yeah, totally.
It is. And there's beauty in that.
Yeah.
There's so much beauty in exactly what he said. There's just so much beauty in it.
Forgiveness is hard.
Forgiveness is hard, but forgiveness is about you.
Yeah, what is forgiveness, right?
What is, what
is the other person? And forgiveness comes up a lot in ceremony. And so one of the things Iboga is really good at showing people is generations. So it might show, so say if you had like an abusive mother, we had this one guest that had a pretty abusive mother, but then Iboga showed them how their grandmother treated their mother.
Mhm.
And what they realized is that their mother had improved that lineage, like was doing better, and could only, go so far, right? Like had a very traumatic and abusive childhood and was trying to do better for her children. Although it was still like not great, but for her with the tools she had, she was doing the best she could. Right? So, and it's sometimes just that understanding that our parents are people, and at different stages of healing and at different places in a journey. And then you go even deeper than that. Well, why did I choose that parent? Right? Why did I choose to have a parent that was abusive or in addiction or, not around? Like, why did my soul choose that as me to go through? And then you can get into even deeper, like, well, what was the karmic? where was I karmically that I needed to learn that lesson? So I think it's not becoming identified, right, with the trauma and learning to, and I think that's what Iboga does so beautifully. It lessens our attachments. So there's like another like Bwiti truth, and there's 3 things that are damaging, which is assumptions, attachments, and belief systems. And so Iboga loves to teach us about those 3 things. What are my belief systems that are negatively impacting my life? What are the attachments I have to stories, to people, to things that are negatively impacting my life? And what are the assumptions I'm making about other, like, things that I have no control over, like other people's thoughts? Like, I'm assuming I know what someone's thinking, feeling, or doing. I actually have no idea. And that's dangerous because it only wreaks negative, probably, most likely, it has a negative impact on me. Because usually we go to like, oh, what are they saying? They're talking about me. Maybe they don't like me. And, they're probably, judging me and blah, blah, blah. When really they're thinking about themselves. It's not a single thought of you in
Right.
mind that whole time.
It happens, yeah.
They're thinking about, oh my God, is my hair okay? And does my shirt look weird? Like we're very self-absorbed, and we think that other people are self-absorbed about us. They're self-absorbed about themselves. So I think like when we break it down, those 3 things, that's like, it's just about these lessons and what we need to grow through.
And then back with the forgiving part of it, right? It's forward giving, and we're actually forgiving ourselves.
Yeah.
And that comes up a lot too. It's in these plant medicine circles. When people are thinking about these past traumas, and some are horrific, and there's different types, and they're like, how do I forgive someone for doing that to me? It's like, I didn't ask for that. No, you didn't. That's horrific. It was horrific. But when did that happen? What happened when I was 3? Yeah, that's horrific. But that's the past. And you need to forgive yourself. Well, why? I didn't do anything. But you've been holding it. You've been holding on to that moment your whole life. And you're either angry, or you've got grief around it, or shame around it. All these things are somatizing into illnesses and who knows what else, but it's there. It's palpable. We know people like this, and it's hard to watch them look at themselves like that. And the moment you forgive yourself from hanging on to it, not excusing so-and-so, but for hanging on to that, it just sheds and becomes lighter. You don't forget what happened. Don't forget, at least we repeat it, so you don't forget, but there's that letting go that doesn't emotionally charge you anymore. It doesn't somatize. It's not thick in your skin, and that is freedom. You know, that is where forgiveness is amazing. Because, you know, if I say I forgive you for whatever, it doesn't mean I'm going to say what you did is right, but it frees me from being in that situation and holding it. Because, you know, 20 years from now, you're not going to remember that you did this thing on this podcast, George, but I'm going to remember it. And, you know, I remember back when I was 60 and that George guy, you know, kept looking off to the right-hand side, not looking at us. I'm like, I don't know, something was wrong. I'm not sure. He was adjusting the color. I'm not sure. But I never got over it. You know, I know it sounds silly, but why are we hanging on to stuff? It is kind of silly. Because we're hurting ourselves.
Mhm.
We're hurting ourselves. And that's how, I mean, it sounded silly, but really, we're just hurting ourselves. So stop. You know, and it's just as simple as that. Just, okay, I don't have to. I don't have to hang on to it anymore. I don't have to have that affect me. You know, I can choose or not choose to associate with this person anymore. It doesn't, that's not even the part of it. Just, I'm not going to do that. You know, what, you know, why should I cry over something when that person's not crying over it anymore? You know, I'm just holding my own party here. You know, a pity party, right?
Yeah.
And we do. I mean, and we've all been there in some degree. We have. But realizing it's really good. So that forgiving, and that's the beautiful part. That's where the healing comes. And you know, you can actually be the ancestor that heals your whole lineage.
Mm.
You know, you can stop that from continuing generational after you. And that's beautiful. That's where it becomes, wow, I'm this because of, in spite of, and because of all that, I'm this. I mean, the stuff that makes up me as a man, there's a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of stuff in my life, lived a lot of different lives in my life. My tattoos have all these different meanings and stuff from different stages of my life, good, bad, and indifferent. And they're important because they make me who I am. You know, and there's different levels of forgiveness and things that have happened. But that's the beautiful part of it. Yeah.
And I think the other part of that equation too is like, okay, so a lot of times our traumas are part of our identity, right? I am Michelle and I, you know, had an abusive partner, or I am Michelle and I, you know, had abusive parents, right? Part of my identity. So if we're going to challenge that, what do we want instead? Because we hold on to these things because we know them, right? And then and we would rather hold on to the things we know than explore the unknown and possible better, right? Even though what we know is harming us. So we ask this of people when they come in. Okay, well, okay, great. You want to let go of all these things. I want to let go of my self-doubt. I want to let go of my, you know, attachment to, you know, this addiction. I want to let go of all these things. Okay. And people can list them really easy. They can just go, and you say, okay, well, what do you want to get rid of? Yep. I have my list. Yeah. It's 10 things long. I have 40 questions for the medicine of all the things I need to know about why I'm broken. And then you go, okay, well, what do you want to replace that with? And they're like, oh,
There's another part, huh?
I just want to live in joy. Yeah, but what is joy? What does that life mean to you? What do you want to bring in? Because we can't just create a vortex and we can't just take things out and not put something in its place. Like you have to bring something you want in. And that's hard for people. People often, especially when we're at the beginning of the journey and we're really just like really looking at where our addictions are, where our flaws are, right? Where we're broken, okay? And then we're like, okay, well, if you don't know where you want to go, how are you going to get there? If you don't know what you want to become, if you don't know who you are, then who you want to be. And if you don't know the answer to that question, that's fine. Then let's ask that question. who am I? Who do I want to be? Like, what do I want to become? What do I want to project out into the world? What do I want to create? Because if I'm not creating something intentionally, then life is going to create it for me. So it's bringing intention into your experience, not just, saying, okay, medicine, rid me of all my sins. But, also now I want to be intentional with my life and move forward with understanding and knowing. Right. And so that's part of that process of becoming aware, becoming conscious, is becoming intentional. It's not just floating through life totally oblivious, right? And we know there's lots of people like that. They just kind of, float through life, just do the thing, never question, never,
Unconscious traveler.
never questioned, and they end up sometimes at the end of their life and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, I missed out on some things, right? So it's beautiful. I think now the mainstream part that's beautiful is that we're asking that question, who am I? What am I doing? Why do I do the things I do? How do I become whole again, or remember who I am again? How do I come back to my purpose? What is it I wanted to do while I was here? So I don't have to come back and do it again.
And sometimes we have to have little notes so we remember what we did. I'm not preaching to the choir. You read that.
Let it go.
Let it go. That came up in a journey for me, I'm telling you.
Before the movie Frozen came out, okay?
Way before. So it's remembering.
It is remembering.
That was a really good question Robert had. Boy,
yeah, he's a brilliant individual. Thank you. Lighter coming into us from YouTube. I'm always here. Lighter, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Forgiveness is releasing both parties energetically, not some grand gesture. Sounds like he's been through some of the fires of forgiveness there.
No, yeah. Those who know.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's true. It is true. Yeah. Michele and Patrick, this has been an amazing conversation, and I'm grateful to get to sit down here with you and just talk story a little bit and figure some things out. We blew through like 2 hours like it was nothing. It's so crazy to think about, and for me, it's just such a mark of a great conversation when it goes by so fast. But as we're kind of landing the plane, where can people find you? What do you have coming up, and like what are you excited about?
So I'll let Patrick he's the social media guy, so I'll let him.
Okay.
Oh, blame it on me now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
transference.
I have to read it. I have to go, okay, our IG is.
So you can find us on Instagram, and we're Soul Reflections Iboga. Our Facebook page is the same, Soul Reflections Iboga. You can reach us on our email at info@soulreflections.net. And our website is soulreflections.net. That's, it's not about advertising. It's about starting the conversations, because people want to talk about things, and they're always looking to where they can talk and who understands. So we're trying to really open that up with that. Things that we're excited about, man, besides life.
Yeah.
We've got some amazing retreats coming up in end of September, beginning of October, down in Mexico. We're looking to go up in the mountains of Tepoztlan and do some retreats in there, which is going to be phenomenal. We have an amazing team who we're all Bwiti initiates and just lovely, lovely people to work with as well. So that's new.
So we like doing these retreats in community. Like we do private ones, small ones in our home, but when we can work in community, it's so much better. I love
That's
it
fun.
so much.
That's fun too. Yeah.
And then we have a fire talk. So within our community, so we have a preparation community and an integration community. And every month for integration, we do a monthly fire talk. And so on June 8th, what we'll do is we'll make the link available. So it's not just for the people in the community, it's for anybody that's experienced Iboga if they want to chat. So we'll put that on we'll make sure we put that in our Instagram and Facebook, those links, so people can connect if they want to just talk. And those talks are amazing because, people are coming together and sharing what the medicine has taught them and continuing to teach them. And sometimes we have people come that did the medicine like 5-7 years ago, and it's still an impact in their life. Like it's still teaching them lessons. Like the Iboga, we always say Iboga never leaves you. It stays with you forever if you want it to. So it's a beautiful spirit, and it has so much to teach us. So
2:45. I'm gonna start 1 o'clock. Oh shoot. Michele, Patrick,
yes,
I hope you have a beautiful day. I will sign off. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. Have a beautiful day. Hang on briefly afterwards, Michele and Patrick. That's all we got, ladies and gentlemen. Aloha.